Yeah, that's all.
Oops, sir.
Oh, very made it.
Oh, hey.
Hey,
Snuck in
We were
there.
just talking
I
about
did
you.
with 1 minute left.
There you go.
Everyone, it's 12 o'clock, so I'd like to open the meeting for the Airport Authority, regular monthly meeting. So I have a roll call sheet up. Everyone has signed it in. We do have quorum. And looking at the agenda, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
And it, please be agenda.
I have a motion for member Kazor. Do I have a second?
I'll second
I
that.
have a second for member Larson. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say no. The motion carries to approve the agenda. Next, I have the approval for the minutes and
Extra copies here if necessary.
I've read them and everything looks in order. Have a motion to approve the minute.
Make that motion.
Have a motion from member Larson. Do I have a second?
You get with them, I'll second.
A second from member Kazor. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries to approve the minutes. Next, we have reports. Paul.
There's should be hard copies around for everybody for the reports. Quick follow-up on, all the asphalt on the airport's been rejuvenated, form of fashion. And so, except for a couple of small spots, one is because right in front of area, and that's their asphalt. And then there's one section that was damaged during the marking removal. And I believe I pointed that out last meeting. And so when they came back to repair it, it has to, I guess you could say, season for a while before they can rejuvenate. So it won't be rejuvenated. So but you really can't really tell just because it's so nice and fresh anyway. Can't really tell. But since the rejuvenation, they have come back and put the permanent markings down. They have, the repair was done at the same time. We tried to have a little bit of an overlap so that, because we were going to have to close the runway for at least a day anyway. We were able to close it. We closed it from about 9 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night to be able to, and actually they got it done early enough that we were able to, they were done, but it had to season a little bit. So they
Lisa. There we go. Wait. Oops.
So we were able to, so we almost, as far as the remarking part of it, I mean, the biggest part was when they when they originally seal coated it, that was the day that was when we were shut down quite a bit. But for the most part, for going back for the permanent markings, there is, we were just lost service just for that day. So it worked out well. We were able to, for the rest of the time when they were doing the repairs on the taxiway, able to stay fully operational. Some back taxiing was required on some of that, but for the most part, we were able to keep that in operation. It worked out well. Repair job, it looks great. And that was right paving, so they were very familiar with what we did. So it's all taken care of there. One of the things that big part of June, July has been the fact of Murfreesboro closed down for a large asphalt project that they had that affected, not like ours, which was just seal coat. They had to resurface their runway, taxiway. As a matter of fact, they're still not done with the taxiway ramp. So anybody that was sitting outside of Murfreesboro had to go away. They didn't have an option. Those that were in their hangar had options to stay, but so we had a lot of extra people here for the last little bit have been here. The guys behind you ended up having to relocate to Tullahoma and McMinnville just to be able to get enough support to handle all their aircraft. But we've set people in the grass. We made tie downs. You'll see later in the maintenance report that we put gravel down and added some tie downs on the north side of the T hangars. I'm sorry, south side of the T hangars. sounds like that's pretty simple, but it's a little bit more to it than just that. So there's a lot more to it on our guys' part of it. But we were able to take care of some people that needed to relocate temporarily and put them up there. We had people everywhere. It seemed like there. And Murfreesboro Aviation ended up needing to locate here because their agreement with Smyrna fell through at the last minute. So it was entertaining to have two flight schools operating on each end of the building. And each side of the ramp had a flight school on one end and on the other. So it was been very entertaining to have both those here at the same time because they're both busy. But Murfreesboro Aviation has about twice as many airplanes as our flight school does. So they were all over the place too.
You think that's the reason for the 120% jump in fuel year over year for June?
Yes, that's a big part of it. Well, we've always had an agreement with we've had an agreement with Murfreesboro Aviation for a while now, but yes, you'll see the numbers in July as well, the jump. Because of the fact that I think Vivian was sending them a bill of about $6,000 a week or so, something like that, or every how often she sent the bill through to them. Because they had a line in front of the self-serve constantly. And I did not update the self-serve numbers, and I should, but and I probably will for the next report, just when it's final, just to see when that law finally stopped. But they had airplanes in front of self-serve constantly. We also had one of their, one of the construction companies has a citation that he does share some time with and things like that. He's not a 135, but there's some different people that utilize that aircraft for transportation, and it was with us for a while too, so that helped us out as well. Stay also for as usual. We don't usually have a July meeting, so it's kind of interesting, even though we did change the date, but we don't usually have a July meeting. The budget finalized at the end of June and was passed for the new FY starting July 1. All of our capital was denied except for one request for the oil water separator system. That's for the sewer system. That's because Chevrolet Power was asking for that. We hope to still be able to take advantage somehow, some way, find some money somewhere for requesting grants, but we'll see how that goes. That comes about when it comes time to look for our local share for some of the federal money that's sitting out there that we have set aside. But that part was removed from our budget as well. We'll see how that works when it comes to it. Because I've already the state in their process has asked me in reference to our ACIP, because we're in the process of updating our ACIP. They said something about holding off on our federal funds, and I said, and not requesting it. And I said, as long as you can find me about $1.3 million from somewhere else, but that's what our next project is about. Right now is estimated at 1.3, which is a taxiway, and they didn't give me an answer. So we'll see. We'll be seeing how we can stage it, what we can do to try to eat that elephant one bite at a time. Going back to the oil water separator, we are in the process of working with our consultant and their project manager, and then also the contractor, Hawkins & Price, to get the oil water separator into this project while they're still here, because it's a much more affordable to make it work while they're here. It sounded logical, sounded easy, but it hadn't turned out to be that easy to make that work. So we're hoping we can do something that will make that will satisfy Chevrolet Power, so that we don't end up having to, based on codes, have an oil water separator for every one of our hangars out there that needs to come under construction. And it just seems to make more sense to have one, either bigger one, if we can, than having 70 or 80 individual ones. And so that we're still going to end up having some here that'll be private, but that'll come later with different types of hangars, things of that nature. The
Oh, where is that oil water separator? Is it down by the wash back down there, or
No, currently, what we're planning on trying to make it happen is across from the north hangar. Because we wanted to catch anything that's left, anything that might happen before it gets pumped into the city system and it crosses at the bank is where it pushes and it connects at the bank to the city system.
Well, that's the last point.
That's the last point. And that's how we're trying to do, because originally with Dr. George's hangar and the others that are going through right now, the city codes department decided that they all needed oil water separator just in case an aircraft had a spill inside the hangar.
What happens to the oil? Somebody pick it up or is it?
Right now, the way it's set up right now, there's a drain in Dr. George's hangar, but it's been capped at the end. But what it does is they'll collect and hold, and then they'll basically we call it kitty litter, put something on it that absorbs it, and then they have to clean it out. So it'll go through an absorbent situation. What they're trying to do now is with the system, when it connects, if something doesn't get absorbed and gets into the system, they want it to have a way of getting collected before it gets dumped into the city waste. So that would probably be based on some of the places I've seen around here, that might be the easiest stuff that goes through some of the waste sewer system with the city. But we're going to try to we're trying to make it all work well with the system. So we're trying to see what we can do about making that happen.
That's only on the newer stuff, right? The older ones are
It'll be on
grandfathered.
the low pressure, it'll be on just this pressure system. So there has been another money set aside, which at some point in time, the money is now available. It's just when the government gets it here, the local government gets it for the next section of sewer. It's the old school gravity feed. It's going to take care of MTSU and take care of any other development on the south side of the Carrick property. Those will have separate, and those will have to have a separate system. And more than likely over there, based on the size of the hangars that are scheduled to be built over there, and they were looking at building in that area, they'll have their own, each individual hangar will have to have their own oil water separators because of their size. I know MTSU will, because they'll have to do it just because they've got maintenance that'll happen in there. I think you got one now, right? I think the only one right now is McAir, if I remember correctly. Arian, I don't think has one. I know the team. How often do you have to clean that out?
The only one to rain back fills up. Yeah, would never have to build it.
That's, so it's really just, it's in case of a catastrophic situation. So it's really for a standard, if somebody drips or overfills or something like that, that's nothing, that's always usually cleanable. And it's just for a case of emergency situation.
Well, what is our policy in light of MTSU bringing several more airplanes down here, and during the pre-flight, when you check for water and the gas and you drain each tank, and then you can see the separation between the water and the gas. What is our policy in terms of what do you do with that solution? You pour it on the ramp? Do you put it back in the tank? Do you have a little bucket there that you can pour it in, or just
Currently, we do not have one. But
Yeah.
Do you have a standing protocol? I bet.
go back in the tank, even if it has water?
But it separates.
It does separate, so you can't pour it, and then what do you do with the water and stuff? Well,
Oh, I don't know what we can count on that.
We've had yeah, so in the past, we've had a bucket in our
That bucket,
maintenance
okay.
department that will contaminate fuel into. But we do have the gas jars to filter out at least sediment.
that's
If it's highly.
takes care of the
contaminated,
major
then
portion of the site.
Yeah, we'll pour it in.
Okay,
We currently have one down by the fuel pump. That's
Yeah.
about, behind the EA here. They're in that area in case there's something that's extreme. But we don't monitor if somebody
No,
on a
no.
pre-flight causes fuel somewhere. I mean, I've seen that happen at every airport. Somebody gets a small sample.
just,
They look at it.
yeah, which way the wind is blowing, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it'd be difficult you'd have to sit out there with a gun and a badge, I guess, every time to keep that kind of stuff happening. Let's see. With also one of the things that I felt to put on here, because of just finalizing a couple things today, as a matter of fact, the Duck River has now, because of the fact that the pipe is in from the sewer project, they can now lay out where their lines are going to go for the hangers for feeding the service for Dr. George's hangar and for those others that are gonna come about. And this could be just as good a place as any to discuss. We had taken into consideration Bill Stewart's lease. Well, one of the things that we'll be discussing with legal about, Mr. Stewart passed away this past Friday. So, he had based on his obituary, a battle with cancer. I'd spoken with him in July, at the first part of July. As a matter of fact, around seventh or fifth, I mean, somewhere in that time frame. First week in July. He was very hard to understand on the phone, and I just thought, because last time I'd spoken with him in person in May or June, I thought he'd had a procedure done or something like that. And originally on the phone, I thought maybe he had a stroke, but turns out they say he had cancer and he passed away. So, he had sold, whether or not money to exchange, I don't know. He'd sold one of the hangars or came to an agreement with an owner for one of the hangars, but I don't think for both. We've been sort of touching base. They were getting ready to move forwards. He was in the process at Telehoma building hangar Telehoma, and then we were next. Well, looking back, and I've got the minutes from when he was approved back in September 21, and he was actually approved for a 2-year construction in hopes that if things went short, whatever, he could, if it went great, then he was going to be able to, the new owners would do the long-term lease. If not, then he would come back and renew his lease with something a little bit more. So this almost sounds horrible, but the timing, we're about to the end of that lease of 2 years. There has not been put anything on the ground. So,
To clarify, the lease was in his name personally, not an LLC.
and it was marketed as an individual, not in Stewart Construction or anything like that. It was Bill Stewart as an individual. Even the minutes, the ground lease with Bill Stewart for 2 years. So it's even stated that way in the minutes. So it could be that, I don't know we'll see if we get approached. This is very, very soon into the process. I'm sure as they go through the deal, they might find what they're doing to finalize his estate. I don't know. We'll see. So I've never had a situation like this, so I'm not sure exactly the best way to handle it, but I did want to confirm, and I did confirm that it was voted specifically as a 2-year and starting, so he was voted in September 5th, September 2nd's meeting. So maybe we had it, we might have until October, but the lease will be up.
And there's been no groundwork or anything.
No groundwork has been done. No materials delivered. There's materials sitting up there right now, but those are for Quigley and DeWeese. Now, the only other thing about that could come up is since Quigley and DeWeese have not broken ground just yet, they could potentially be it would be cheaper for them. Whether they choose to or not, I don't know. I can't answer for them. I have not even brought it up to them because this really caught me off guard when I found out about it. I just found out this week that he passed. And he caught me off guard on that. It would be, for their money wise, it would be cheaper for them to build in that location where Mr. Stewart's property was. But the intent of, it's not changing the intent of what the property was to be used for. It was just the amount of hangars will be going from 3 to 2. But he was building all 3 under one roof. And so they'll have to have separation. So they'll take similar footprint. They'll be a little bit smaller in footprint because they'll be about 30 foot smaller, which would allow them not to have to do any ramp expansion or anything. Like he was going to have to build a little bit more ramp to be able to get out of be able to taxi around the end of the hangar. That won't be required from those 2 hangars. The services are already be there. So it's like I said, it's cheaper on behalf of those two gentlemen. I just don't know what the process is. I was hoping that Ginger was going to be here, that we can bring that up with her. She's either detained or not being able to come today. So
Was there a mechanism in his lease for converting that into a long-term lease? I'm trying to remember
There
when
was
we did
not-
that. I
not
didn't think so.
not what we had originally, because not to what I read, unless I'm mistaken, because it was designed specifically as and labeled as a
Right.
construction lease.
And he was gonna come back in front of the board, if I remember right, and
It was either, the idea was that it was not going to have to amend. It was easier to do a construction lease so that when the rate would change, once the structure was built, the ground lease would change for the long-term lease for those that were doing the new owners. And then also what was for the benefit of the new owners was that the time that it was being built, and they didn't even own it yet, then they still get once they took ownership, they got to have the full lease instead of losing every how many years that Bill had in the lease or something like that, whether it be 2, 5, whatever. So he was due back in, and that's part of the reason that some of the discussions he and I had, he was due to come back before the authority to discuss the future of what was going to be, whether or not another lease or something like that. He was, so that's why he and I had been talking in July, first part of July about it. So this is just putting it out there. I don't have anything it's not like there's anything to vote on or anything like that, because we still have a ducks in a row on it. I'm just putting that out there as information.
and you haven't heard from the family or the estate or anything.
I think I think his burial was maybe yesterday. So I'm sure that there's a lot more on their minds besides finding out what airport he's working on. Because he's, like I said, he literally had broken ground and had board and some other things in Tullahoma for a larger hangar there. So that one is active. I imagine that one will get will get the attention because it's active. All right. So continuing on, you can see, like you said, you've already pointed out some fuel flow, and then also but what's interesting is you can see with the fuel changes, you can go down to the operations.
I
The
saw that.
operations are still
Yeah,
similar. Yeah, there are some this month that have popped up, but June is usually higher anyway. So, but really the operations for the year, for the fiscal year ended up being about almost within 1,000 exactly of last FY. So it's not even the fact that relocating here didn't change our operations. So you can see how much training was coming to the airport. Now, one of the things that did happen, I know we have noticed that we don't have as many Mike Tangos. They're operating in different scenarios now than they had been this summer because of having a different home base. That's kind of messed with, I think, some of their procedures. But they've picked up just recently too. So we'll see how that all fleshes out over the balance of the summer.
all these operations, do they require a touchdown, or is this a low approach, or what constitutes an operation?
We have it set for within about 5, I think we put a fence of around 500 feet.
Okay,
So yes, if they break the fence of about 500 feet, or basically, because when they clog up our airspace, then we count it as operation. Now, FAA argues that point and says touch and goes don't count when you're looking at operations. We do because they tie up our airspace. Sure. And it does mess with our instrument approaches when they're shooting, even though they're not shooting, even though they're not following those instrument approaches, they're shooting those instrument approaches. As a matter of fact, a lot of times we have 3 and 4 going on at one time, and one from one end, one from the other, and a VOR coming across from the other side. And it gets entertaining watching it on VirTower because just waiting. We cringe when we see them coming at each other from all
Exactly.
3 different ways. Also, and I'll mention this too, because it's in the terminal maintenance area. We had new wiring put in our, in the building. You'll see that down the hall, you'll see some new antennas and things of that nature that were not here before because it's been rewired. And with that, we had a couple of little glitches here and there with our talking to our VirTower, being able to talk. So some of these where our numbers are a little short. these are the numbers that are produced by Vertower, but there's some of it that was not being logged because it couldn't communicate with the download because of the internet connection. It couldn't get an internet connection to confirm everything, because what it's collecting from an antenna up here, but then there's also it's coordinating with ADSB, it's coordinating with all the other types of sources to collaborate. And so there were some of our data just didn't get reported properly there and then there, but we've since been able to get all that squared away. Ended up being what it was is when they were doing the cable itself wasn't the problem. It was the installers moved something and it made another cable loose. So that's all it was. But one of the things it has done is our AWAS. It's not compatible. The source for our online communication is outdated. And so when all our stuff got updated, it no longer can talk online. So that's why we've had a lot of complaints about that. But AWAS is reporting. The AWAS was reporting on radio, phone. It's just not, people can't get it on their ForeFlight. And nobody knows how to do anything without ForeFlight anymore. It seems like. So they can't get that data, real-time data without it. So we're working on that. We put a request in with the state and we're waiting on the state to do that since it's officially their AWAS anyway. So we'll see how that goes. All the other numbers are very similar. I guess we'll continue on. You can see some different types of names that are on the business list. But one of the finishing down through, just following on into the maintenance side of things, we've had, as the last meeting, we were still in a hybrid situation with Campbell and Titan. Well, we're still, the hybrid scenario is it's a lot smaller than it was, but we are receiving our fuel loads from Campbell. And we have received we've received actually 2 of each since our last meeting from Campbell. The first one, we had some growing pains. We could tell. We were lucky that we had time and space, and we ordered. As always, anytime we have a standing set up to where there's space available, we order. And because the first load to get here didn't happen as well, and so we worked out a lot of the kinks, and the last couple have gone very smoothly, in my opinion. Okay, great. So and in case you didn't hear, Lisa, we finally have the contract from legal with Campbell. So now we officially, how many weeks later, or months later, we are official with Campbell. And so we have the jet truck. The new jet truck is fully operational, fully badged. Now what we'll do is we'll be switching the badging from on our truck, our avgas truck, and then the signage as well. And then they'll probably within the next 30, 45 days, they want to have an open house where they introduce themselves and things like that, provide lunch for all the pilots based here. And what they're doing is they're encouraging them to sign up for their credit cards, what they're doing, which is good. There's a lot of advantages. I pointed it out to the EAA. Those that are flying Young Eagles and utilize their cards, you get $1 back per gallon rebate if you're flying Young Eagles with Phillips 66. So there's some other things out there that we'll be able to start taking advantage of with Phillips. I know that some of our bigger customers are happy because it's the same points program as World Fuel, which is the big boy out there for the commercial stuff or for the corporate aviation. Some other little small things that are here and there. I think I've mentioned it before. Our fuel farm nozzle. It's going to be a constant battle. We just ordered a different type. We're hoping that it'll see if that can help. But a lot of self-serve. It's not theirs. They don't really care. They put it on the ground when they move they'll drop it on the ground.
Drop it.
Or usually they don't realize the hose reel goes as fast as it does, and they
Drag it
and then all
across
of a
the
sudden start
concrete.
dragging across the ground, and they stop the button, but by that time it's already been drug across the concrete. So that just we're trying a different type of nozzle. Hopefully it'll work. It's got some padding and some protection on it. We'll see how it does and see if it can stand up from getting beat up on a little bit. Other stuff is pretty standard. We've had some mower issues, a lot of mower issues for our guys. At one point in time, we were riding, only thing we had out here was a borrowed lawnmower and our big tractor pulling a rotary mower. So it was entertaining using tractor out in the front to mow the front yard. I did it one day and it was pretty fun because it needs a little bit more room than a zero turn around and just pull that big rotary mower. But we are back. We have one mower that's going to end up having to have an engine replaced on it. That of our zero turns will be taken care of. But in the meantime, the cemetery said we can pretty much keep that loaner as long as we need to. And it's one of our old ones. So James jumped right on it and it's like an old glove for him. Again, like I said, when I put on here gravel install for the south of T. Angers, but it's one little line right there, but it's been a long process getting all that squared away, getting that straight and getting the tie downs to hold like they should and things of that nature without breaking the bank. So that seems rather simple, but it was a lot more to it. It's been
What kind of gravel is that down there? Is it
Crush and run.
crush run?
crushing it.
So it stays firmly packed once it gets wet and run over because,
We brought in public works equipment.
and they tamped it down, did
We
they?
ran
Ran over it.
their roller over it and you can see they've given us one of their old dozers. So we've got one here for the airport now.
Well, I'm sure
lay stuff
Charles,
like that.
I'm sure Charles will tell you it doesn't take but one piece of gravel to come up and nick that prop while you're spinning it up high power and moving it
Yeah.
around.
Yeah,
So-
we've expressed and so far nobody is, because it's pretty tight down there. They're not starting on the gravel.
So they're pushing it off the
They're
gravel.
pulling it off the
Okay.
gravel, turning it 90 degrees onto
Okay.
the asphalt taxiway and then starting up.
And the complete opposite, when they come in, they're not coming in and then full power, right brake and spinning it around.
Yeah, no, they would not only tear up their airplane, but the two beside them, because it's pretty snug down there, because we were trying to help people out, trying to fit people in that were needing, requesting assistance from Murfreesboro and some others too, and some of our own as well, because we're constantly having, Vivian's turning people away now. We've tried everything we can to try to fit people in, but until we can build something else, whether it be a ramp or something, we told them you can tie down in the grass. That's the only place we can put you and you're on your own. We just have no, it's a shame when you have 650 acres and you have no place to put anything. Just because we don't have the infrastructure. So we're working on that. Other things down through here, the terminal, as I mentioned before, new wiring, new Wi-Fi. You'll find that's a new IT director. Might even be listening in on this. He's recording it, but it's something that he's working through with the whole city. We just happen to be one of the first ones, which we're excited about out here. And eventually with the new system, we'll be connected with downtown and everybody else. So all the different departments will be able to help us out. But the new Wi-Fi for the customers here will also help speed up the process. So our people that come in to upload data or things of that nature, have a lot better speeds, and it'll be a bit more secure as well, because they have to go through and say yes, just like when you walk into any hotel or any kind of other public place, when you connect to it, you have to agree to all the proper setups. There's a seat right back there, Dr. George, if you like. You also see that we put some new monitors or new TVs back behind the reception desk there, behind Vivian there, on her wall. New computer system in there to try to be able to get some better services, because but right after we put them up, then our AWAS, we couldn't get our AWAS. We usually have our AWAS information up there, but now we can't get that online. So it's sort of just, it's been nice to be able to have Oshkosh up there.
Live shot of Oshkosh, that's cool.
Oshkosh,
Yeah.
over the shoulder while we're also doing our business that we have here. And as always, you can see on the bottom, it's mowing season, so I can say all kinds of different things about things that come across with mowing. The rain has been great for us, and bad, and good and bad at the same time. Depends on who you talk to.
James.
Yeah, you talk to the maintenance guys, they'll say it's bad. Also, as part of my report is, we met with MTSU and their marketing department. They've established September 21st. You should be hopefully getting, if you haven't already, an invitation to their announcement that will happen on the 21st at 10 a.m. here at the airport, September 21st. You'll be asked to sit up front. Probably you'll have seats up front available if you're here, available on the 21st.
Is this the one the governor's going to?
Yes. So this is the one that the governor will be here from 10 to 11. One of the things that
That's what we said, yes.
Yeah,
Lisa just stepped out, but one of the things I was going to, with this was to throw out there because of, I know everybody's got busy schedules and the fact that everybody might be here, if there might be some discussion about, instead of turning around the very next week and the very next Thursday, having your regular monthly meeting, you might decide that we can, if necessary, have an agenda after that meeting or after that announcement. It just all depends. I mean, I just throw that out there. Lisa and I talked about it briefly just because I know that everybody's here is pretty busy, but it'd be nice for everybody to be at that one. And it'd be nice to take advantage of, if everybody's here, just to go ahead and have the meeting on the 21st versus the very next Thursday. But see what Lisa has to say about that, and we'll might discuss that later at the end or something like that. Just think about that. But the 21st, they'll start some activities will start at 9:30. The official start, I guess you might say, is at 10, where they bring in the airplanes, and the speakers will start around 10 o'clock. And luckily for everybody, the governor has to be gone by 11 o'clock. So you don't have to worry about it running long or anything like that. But it's going to be a big production because Scott didn't realize that we were having a meeting. He came in on that meeting, and this room there's as many people in this room for their marketing department as there is right now. Just to cover it and what they have planned and what they want to do. And so it'll be a nice big event, and there will be tents just in case it gets too hot. I think that's it for that part of it. Now, as far as financial, again, as usual, you didn't see June because there's a lot of year end that's required. So there's always the last little bit of the month that's, and the year end closeouts and things of that nature that are necessary. Administration's constantly going through right now, fighting to get everybody's last June bills and any work that was done in June getting paid. They're still fighting through to try to get it paid. So until that gets closed out and the year end gets closed out, we won't have that June report.
These look pretty good on the game.
Yep.
Mhm.
So we're hoping again, like you pointed out with the fuel numbers, that we'll see a much better gain there as well, to finish off the year with a bang. We'll see. Next year will look completely different because we'll start having some other lease payments and things like that will start showing up. Each year from that point forward will look better. Is there anything though that I might be able to bring out, talk about, or anything on the financials that we need?
I have a motion to approve the 3 reports from Tom.
I move to the acceptance for the 3.
Motion from member Casort. Do I have a second?
Okay.
Second from member Larson. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say no. So motion carries to approve the reports. Now we're at old business, and the first item is rate discussion.
We have added some information. You'll see a large amount of handouts that were given, some from last week, but also from, there's a new page that we've been added just to give even more data for your discussion. Because it was brought up with the state at one point in time about other types of storage in town, things of that nature, and how it's fared. And so we took advantage of the fact that we have an intern with us, and he called around and made some more inquiries about storage units and even boat slips and things like that for storing in the area. He had a hard time even finding storage units that were big enough, because when you get to the size of our square footage of our T hangers, they start really looking at them as warehouse space. Because it goes beyond regular rental storage. So he picked the biggest ones he could find in the area. He picked a sample from all the, surrounding areas for storage units, and you can see what their price per month, and price per square foot, things like that are as well. That's been provided along with some of the local lakes here, things like that, even for a boat slip, just because it just gives you an idea. Now, these are, the more you get, the bigger in the cupboard and things of that nature. When you start adding all the extras, that's just where they start. That's not counting, for power and whatever else other types of amenities you might have added to it. And you also see that there's the RFP schedule on there as well. Well, that's one thing I forgot to mention earlier in the other report under fee schedules. Maybe think about it. We finally got, I wrote it down, but I skipped over it when I was saying it. We got the electrical line run to the pole outside for the 220. So our GPU is now offering continuous service. So it's nice to be able to charge for our GPU service. And so we already have had a couple of jets taking advantage of that. With it being nice and warm outside, they can leave their air conditioner running when they're sitting there on the ramp.
On the airport fee, the tie down per month is $50, right? Not $5.50.
I bet 550 is great.
Yeah, but
50.
It's 50.
that's what I figured.
And the GPU usage is not on here, right? What does it go for, Paul, or do you know?
It's $50
Per hour, per usage?
per usage.
So if he sits here all night and runs the AC off of our GPU, it's $50.
As of right now, yes.
That's
If we find that becomes an issue, as long as we've had it run right now, it's been a little over 2 hours, like 2 hours.
But that's not bad. Okay.
So, if we find that we start having those kind of requests, then we'll adjust our policy. But right now, we just have that one connection.
Well, like a boat, certain airplanes will only use so much electricity, as far as how long they use it would make the difference.
I don't think they would keep it hooked up overnight. I don't think that'd be something they would do.
I wouldn't think that, most aircraft owners wouldn't want that anyway, because they wouldn't want to have their systems running or anything like that. I wouldn't think so. If they know they're going to shut down and get gone for, the only reason why he was even running that long was because weather was coming through. He was hoping it would be a lot quicker. He was expecting to be in and out in probably 30 minutes. And so, weather rolled through, and so they delayed their departure a little bit longer. That's the only reason why he even lasted as long as he did.
Do you have any comments on rate?
When was the last time we adjusted hangar rates? Do you remember? 2 years?
Yes, September was when it was discussed. That was when all the fun came about, was starting in September of 21. And so it's that,
That when we raised them and we had to come back and
right,
And in those rates, we did include a 3-4% CPI index increase. No, okay.
no, that's the thing. That was what's always been discussed each time with the, instead of just establishing a standard rate increase each year, it was stated by the members at the time that they wanted to revisit each time.
yeah, so we did this in September when we raised them a lot, and then we had come back and lowered them. So the actual current increase was probably not until November. October, I think.
If you recognize that. Anybody?
Yeah. So about 20 months or so.
Give or take, yeah.
It's with most fees, most businesses you would expect to raise every
Once
year,
every 12 months.
once a year. So,
And the FAA expects you to, if you read through the grant assurances and other letters, they expect you to charge based on what you have to pay to provide the service. So if the cost of living increases a little bit, then that's justified to put it in the cost of service at that point. So we might want to consider a CPI index inclusion in the rent for the hangars, I would think.
Build it into the lease so
Build in.
that we don't
Yeah.
do this
Not do
every
that.
single time. Yeah.
If you, I haven't had time to go through all of this, but if you went through all of this, all the neighboring, what would your view be on our fee hanger rent versus? I'm not saying John, don't compare to John Tune, okay? I'm not suggesting
It's
that.
more like comps is what you're
Yeah,
looking for.
comparable airports.
It's hard to determine a comparable airport because there are so many variances between the airports, different types of leases, different types of land usage, different types of hangars, different types of clientele, different
Age
types of,
hangers.
and then the list goes on and on.
I got it. I
Okay.
understand. That's why I was asking for an opinion versus
right.
an analysis, if you will.
Well, an opinion sometimes helps with the analysis, since you need to be careful about that.
So, in my opinion, we're kind of in we're in an odd spot, in my opinion, because we're on that next layer. If you usually see, and you can see it around mainly Knoxville, Chattanooga, not as much, but a little bit, but Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis, you'll see the metropolitan area is this dollar amount. The next ring in our situation would be Rutherford County. So all the airports in Rutherford County are going to be a larger step, but not nearly the step that you would see at Davidson County.
Sure.
And then where that next ring out. So where that next ring is sort of, do you go all the way down to the bottom? Or are you going to step it down like a, stair step, like a wedding cake? Are you stepping it down, going from county to county like that? Or do you have to just jump off the deep end? So we're in that odd area right there that we still have, because we have people that are commuting every morning. Eric got passed by them this morning commuting to Nashville, so they expect Nashville. They know Nashville. Everybody around here knows Nashville, knows Murfreesboro. They're commuting to Murfreesboro, so they're prepared for the prices every day that they pay in those cities. And then they come here. Where are we? So we kind of need to find. It's, do you need to compare to Murfreesboro? We do. Do we need to compare to Murfreesboro? But we also have to compare to Lewisburg as well, compare
Exactly.
to Pulaski.
And again, the FAA suggests that any one of those methods is tolerable. They frown on some of them and they appreciate others. The compensatory method would probably be one that they appreciate, which involves determining your overall cost of running the airport and providing the service. And then at that point, you take those figures and determine what it costs to rent a hangar, to run the terminal, to run the and these costs include renovations, new ramps, new taxis, et cetera. So rather than going to Murfreesboro and talking to them about what they use to come up with their figures, I'd be curious as to why you don't want to include John Tune. What level in your mind determines that John Tune shouldn't be used? Those are the kind of questions that you would avoid if you use the compensatory method.
Where we built in,
Where you build what it costs to run the airport.
Well, we approached it that, I remember the discussion because when I laughed about the sheet, that's what got us in big trouble last time when we looked at that way, because we looked at what the gap was. They took looking at the financials, the latest financials, and looked at what the gap was and how did we close that gap?
And well,
Make it
because
break
we were
even.
behind already. at that
So
point,
because we
right.
were so far behind,
Right.
when they tried to close the gap and put the rates that would have closed the gap, that's Eric did a lot of math to close that gap. And when that put out there, it made sense to everybody at the table until everybody,
But it was a bit more than the general public, but the
Yeah.
tenants wanted to come,
so there's gonna have to be a
happy medium.
Yeah, there's gonna have to be a step somewhere in that process. I'm not sure just taking into consideration what the CPI is right now, 8%, you know, because it's fluctuated a little bit.
I just did that. I got a little inflation calculator. It took 2021 through 2023. So this point in time, so that's 2 years. And the total rate of inflation over that 2 year period is 13%. So I think it was greater in 2021 and has kind of calmed down a little bit in 2022, but
What
the
is it,
combined
what is it
difference,
right now? Do you know, Eric, the rate of inflation,
I think it's somewhere around 4%.
3.5 to 4?
Yeah. But I took 2021 since that was the last time we raised to now, and you're looking at a aggregate of 13%.
So if we had raised the rents or the fees 13%, 12% in order to match what we were being charged or what the rate of inflation was, now that it has come down, will you be willing to bring the rents back down to the current rate of inflation?
I remember having this discussion about trying to build some sort of inflation indicator
And
into
that
our
would be the
leases.
better way to go, right?
So the company I work for, an aviation company, we have leases at 5 different states now and probably 10 different airports, ranging from little airports like this all the way up to, Charlotte International
Right.
Airport. And some of our leases are a fixed inflation indicator, 3% a year. That's very common. Some of our leases are kind of what you were just saying. It's tied to a CPI rate of inflation for the Southern Index.
The FBI, the FAA would like to see those rates as predictable and as consistent as possible.
So the CPI rate of inflation for the Southern Index, for instance, our Tupelo FBO lease is tied to that. And as you suggest, if the rate of inflation goes down, goes negative, we pay less. And that happened one year. I think our rent went down by 0.8%, almost a full percent. But then again, the flip side of that is when you're in a high inflationary period, like we've been in for a couple of years, our rate was it 21 or 20 went up 8.5%.
Right.
So I'm amenable to both ways of thinking, either build in a flat amount, and from a business owner's point of view, that's something you can count on. Okay, I know it's going to go up just 3% a year or whatever it is.
They favor that, it's something predictable rather than the Chicken Little sky is falling sequence. Where, inflation is 12%, we need to raise our rates 12%. And then what happens when the inflation rate comes down, just leave it there, rather than just making it a consistent, predictable, constant, and it keeps up on a yearly level. So the rent goes up consistently at least and predictably.
Pilots are never gonna like their rate.
I think this meeting is not,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
this is
I
board
didn't,
members.
I didn't.
That's
At the
fine.
moment.
So-
Nobody likes their rent going up, just.
No, I was just gonna say,
But time for citizen comments is in the agenda. So Robert's rules requires it. The board has the discussion. So no disrespect intended. I'm sorry. So I asked our intern to look at a number of different things. And admin, we were looking at how many people are on our waiting list right now too. We have 120 people on our waiting list at the moment. Some of the people at the very top of the list have been there since 2014. So almost 10 years. The newest person on the list was on the list 2 weeks ago. So it's not just people who have been on the list 9-10 years. We are having new people jump on the list as well. So it tells me that the demand for the product is there at the current prices that we have. So
I would agree, but does that mean in turn that we need to build more hangars? Or
sure
that-
it does.
Or that, of course it does, or
Yeah.
that we need to increase the rate to the point where the people that are already here say, I'm done with it. And those that have been on the list for 5-6 years say, yeah, I'll pay $500 a month.
Yeah, that's not what I was suggesting. I'm suggesting there's an extreme shortage of hangars being built.
We need to build.
And it's quite likely that we won't be building 120 hangars.
Anytime.
So we really got to keep care of the ones we have, which are how many years old now? 20,
That's 15, aren't they?
Huh?
Oh, 20?
No, they're pushing 20 years old.
Oh.
so our,
Yeah, they're pushing 20, up to 18 to 20 years old.
I think it's extremely important that we, keep them in good working order, and does that require an investment from time to time? And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, the doors.
Yeah.
Cables.
right.
Which we do. I mean,
Electronics.
we do have an annual inspection. Not only do we have timely as things are needed, but we do have an annual inspection that requires, and we touch every piece that moves on the hangers just to make sure. And yes, it is that time because of the age that the roof, Vivian laughs because I get a call from roofing companies almost on a daily basis, it seems like, because they know, because I've reached out getting estimates. Because those grommets, the rubber,
Yeah.
so those screw heads, they're starting to deteriorate, the leaks are starting to show, so it's about time that we're gonna have to go through. But when you're running at a negative,
Well, but the FAA does allow for maintenance fees, maintenance costs, and you can fold that in to your, overall costs and therefore into your rent, your fees.
Do these financials include depreciation?
I have to look, that's a
I
good
can't
question.
find it.
What's your question? I didn't hear.
If the financial statements include depreciation. Can't find it. Or these.
I don't
financials
think
are cash.
in government accounting, they do that, right? I
I
mean,
think they're only cash. I don't
Right.
think
They're cash,
yeah,
My point
Yeah, you're not supposed to have a profit.
whether it's
Exactly.
government accounting or
That's what
GAAP.
it is.
Right.
So let's, real world, things depreciate.
Real world
sure.
at the airport is different though,
I'm talking real world.
which is outside the airport.
No,
Everywhere.
Come back.
airport's real world
Okay.
too.
Appreciate.
It depreciates. Now, maybe the FAA doesn't wanna, that's different.
Are you using a historical cost analysis in this? Because there is no depreciation there. You paid what you paid for it.
And it's not worth what you paid
That-
for it
That's
when it
not
was
what,
new.
that's not what they're
And
after.
therefore, if you wanna go current value, I'm happy to go current value with you. You know,
They-
so,
they
so
suggest that
if
that
you
is
wanna
a
talk
technique.
accounting, I'll talk accounting,
Okay,
okay? Being a CPA, I can talk accounting with you.
okay, so then you'll understand that when the FAA says that is a potential way to go about it, about justifying and creating your rents and fees, et cetera. We would, however, you use a compensatory method, which involves determining what it costs to run your airport and do not don't go overboard with the profit. There is no profit. So
I've
keep-
not
keep
said a
it
word
there.
about profit, have I? I've just talked about depreciation. So if you want to talk about what it costs to run this airport, you include depreciation as a cost.
Absolutely.
That's all I was trying to get
Okay.
to. Do these financials include depreciation? They don't. I
You'd
don't
have to
think.
ask them.
I don't think they do.
I think it's cash basis, and therefore the $279,000 loss or whatever it is through May, plus depreciation.
Mhm.
To be able to replace the hangar or to fix the roof or all those things, you need to be including, if you will, a reserve for depreciation to be able to do that. So
Right.
I'm trying to get to what's our real cost.
Well, that's
And
my point as well.
And that's what I was trying to get to, was your point on compensatory, what is the real cost to keep this place going and maintain it? And not all of it should be on the hangars,
No, it's-
obviously.
it's dispersed throughout the.
Right.
airfield.
So yes,
And we use that cost as our target of becoming self-sustainable.
exactly.
Right.
I'm in agreement.
Okay.
I was just thinking there's another cost that's probably not in these financials that we need to include.
In that cost, like you mentioned before, and both Eric's alluded to it in different forms, but there's nothing that's being set aside for any future growth. By the fact that we'll never, because we can't even maintain what we have, we're never gonna have enough money to build those 120 hangars.
Right.
Was the maintenance on the hangar included in the maintenance and repair of the facilities?
Yes,
That's what you've allowed
that's,
for the whole
the
airport.
whole airport, but that's part of it, that's put in there. That we have in there, the cabling, the silicone, the things that, but we try to, with manpower, stay ahead of it so that we don't have anything major to like replace an entire door or motor or anything like that.
So it really comes down to the point of what is reasonable to expect as an increase, because what we found last time was doing the raw math and saying, okay, just divide into the loss, created quite a bit of chaos.
Was the chaos that we lost customers? But you said we have a list of people. What's the chaos?
There was quite a bit of negative feedback from the current occupants of the T hangars. They got very vocal, very upset. They came and saw the mayor, all of us individually on the board, packed the board meetings. I'm sure some here today because of this topic on the board meeting. So those
It's
were
because they
what we,
voted to double the.
It was a doubling of.
all at once.
But it still was unexpected
It was
amount
unexpected.
in
and it had
relation to what we have to deal with.
Went from
Right.
no increases for 12 years
Yes.
to this one doubling.
yeah, so there were no increases for 12 years and I did, Paul's got those figures he can show you. I mean, I sat right here in this very seat and we were doing those numbers. What is the current loss year to date for the airport? What is our current expected fuel projection? Then how do we break even if that was the goal by increasing hangar rents? And it came to an amount that was roughly double. The board passed that. The board got a tremendous, and the city got a tremendous amount of negative feedback for that. The board came back and reduced that amount to what is here today.
Went from, was it 215 to 430?
Yeah, so it was, it was 215, I believe, was the amount that had been in place for forever. The amount to break even was roughly 430, and that's what we passed. And then after the uprising, if you will, we backed off, I believe it was half of that increase. And so we ended up with 315.
We did 100.
And that's kind of the history of how we got to where we're sitting at the moment. And now we're yet again facing, I think, the same problem that brought us to that is that we have not built in any sort of inflationary rise. So we're going to suffer that again if we're not keeping up.
So you like the idea of building it into the lease each year?
That is my evolving thought because I don't want to face that again. And it didn't seem that it was very well accepted and was a little confusing to some that you tie this to an index. You look at the index at November of each year and you add that. I mean, that didn't seem to go over well as either. So it seemed better that people could look at their lease. I know what I'm paying now. I know what the lease says about the inflation factor. I'll know what I pay next year. I'll know what I pay the year after. I know what I pay the year after. The danger with that is if we pick an amount too low, then we slowly slip. And if we pick an amount too high, then, we get
Would
to
you
an amount.
average over a year's period or to come up with an amount?
Well, so I'll just take my little inflation
But it would be
calculator.
different every year, but it would be
Reset.
based on, they'll know what it's based on.
If you go back 20 years, the rate of inflation is about 2.56 a year for the last 20 years.
2% is acceptable or normal or what it's expected as far as the target inflation number. But if y'all didn't raise it in 12 years, what did they expect?
Well, I don't think anybody was paying attention.
Is that,
I don't think anybody was paying attention.
oh, well, 12 years, so we're all big boys here and we're all adults and it's 12 years since anybody had raised the rates. It would seem to me that it wasn't like punitive that y'all came up with that number. There was logic behind the number. And
Well, there was, but the public didn't appreciate it.
well, so what?
Well, because we are obligated to treat them fairly and reasonably.
Yeah.
How's it being unreasonable if we're losing money? We're just trying to break even at this
Well,
point.
it's not in terms of losing money, but it's in terms of how you attain it. You can do it over a period of time rather than right off the bat,
All at once.
all at once.
Well, you made the jump from the 215 to the 430 back to the 315.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah,
So we're now here to talk about what the next increase is going to be.
that's correct.
That won't hurt folks' feelings.
Oh, good customer
That
service.
becomes,
But we have a list of customers behind them, they'll step in.
yeah, see, and that's the concept that you don't want to push.
In, just for information, that
Right.
in that process, we lost
One person.
one person left,
Right.
and that was because they had two hangars, one in Murfreesboro and one here, and they just got.
Well,
rid of
that's,
one.
they did that when it doubled.
When they doubled,
I think
they
others
they didn't wait to find out
Others were talking about it, just hadn't had time to,
that, yeah.
and
And
then
so,
it got semi-corrected.
and so when it went back, they decided to stay. But the,
This is not going to be a nice way to put it, but this is like if I owned a Ferrari and I was complaining about how much it cost to change the oil.
Yeah.
Okay,
they complain about that over there and that.
for the people that having to rent these storage units because they live in a little bitty house and they can't afford to add on and they are paying $450 a month.
That amazes me.
You know, I'm not suggesting that either, but I'm just,
But you have to go back and understand why the feds initially decided to support general aviation airports. And those concepts and ideas and rules and regulations are still in place. Some of them need to be changed, some of them don't. Therefore, the cost of hangars is dirt cheap. But the FAA's contention is that we want to make it affordable and reasonable for the general flying public. It's not because you have a Ferrari and complaining about changing the price of changing oil. It's got nothing to do with that. It has to do with the FAA has in mind when they give you loans, if you don't like the rules, then don't take the money.
it has to do with what it costs to run this airport.
Exactly. And they want
And
you,
that's all I'm
and they
talking about.
want you to meet that. Well, don't mention Ferraris then because.
Well, all
we
I'm
don't
talking
have
about
any
are the
Ferraris
people that
on
are
the base.
complaining.
Well,
They, you know,
people are gonna complain, as the gentleman said, about pilots. Anybody that's gonna complain about rent going up substantially like that, without any warning, without any justification, really justification that they know about or heard about.
I get it. I get it.
Been working with pilots for 30 years.
I've been flying for
If we,
30
if we go, if we go up $5, they're gonna complain.
Exactly.
Or if we go down 5, they're gonna complain we didn't go down 10. So they're gonna
They're
complain.
gonna
So
complain either way.
It doesn't matter, but we know that there's gonna be we've got to fill that gap that was discussed. And
I agree, we
so-
need to fill the gap, but it needs to be
If
done in a
that-
standard fashion.
But if, working with the percentage is great, if that 413, if 430 had stayed, then
Right.
a standard escalation clause each year after that would have been great, but there still has to be a market adjustment, which was tried. So I think everybody was aware when they did the 100, that they knew that at some point in time, there was come back and have to do another larger chunk adjustment. It couldn't be, I don't think they thought they would be able to handle another big jump again, but they know until we can get to the market value or where we really should be, then we need to, then at that point, do the regular increases, then you won't have to have this discussion every.
I don't know why we couldn't do both concurrently. We decide what does the rent have to adjust right now to make that correct adjustment. In addition to that, let's not have this discussion every 2 years. Let's go ahead and figure out what the inflation factor needs to be built into the lease. So we can do both at the same time.
You can, and I think it should be a bit more than the inflation factor. You said 2.7 over the last 20 years. It
Yes,
should probably be 3.5 or somewhere in through there to account for contingencies such as the pandemic and things of that nature. So you have a little, what's called like an accumulator. You have a space to expand or a space to contract.
again, as a point of reference, given the leases that we have in all the different states at all the different airports, my leases that are not tied to an inflation index are set universally at a flat 3%. So for instance, my Nashville lease,
How long are the leases?
in some cases 30 years. In some cases 20 with 2 10s. I mean, they're all long-term leases.
Okay.
They're no short-term leases.
And so over the average over those 20 years, it averages out to be okay at 3% at a fixed rate.
Is that, I'm sorry, is that 3% a year?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yes, 3% a year. And it's an automatic, so
T hangers at Tupelo.
we don't have T hangers at Tupelo. All the hangers at Tupelo are common hangers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know how your lease would run with those.
Is the 430 still a good number?
I don't know where we are versus where we were at that point in terms of losses to the airport.
As far as loss, I mean, we're running about the same as far as the loss is concerned. Yes, about the same, but the compared to the surrounding areas, that it's very, that dollar amount is still.
But to Gary's point, did y'all figure in the depreciation, this, other fund and all that when you calculated that number at 430?
No,
No,
I don't
it was
think.
all
we did.
based on,
No.
based on existing
It was-
cash numbers. There is a depreciation schedule that is established for the airport. It's reported in their annual report.
There, if you audit it, you do our audit. Do that.
That's gonna be a problem later if we don't address that.
Yes,
One of
So
the other, I remember quite acutely, one of the other items that came up from citizens, from tenant after tenant that stood up and talked about this was, at that time, MTSU was a rumored new tenant, but we were nowhere near where we are now. You know, there was no lease, we didn't know the scope of everything, and the comment that kept coming up from the tenants again was, well, yes, that's the deficit now, but when MTSU gets here, you won't be in that, and then you've already got these inflated hangar rates, and now MTSU is coming in and solving that financial gap. Then what? So I think that's a valid question to
Are they
ask.
solving our financial gap?
Hmm?
Are they solving our financial gap?
I don't know, Paul.
no,
I don't think so.
no, we had it laid out that way, but then there was some changes that were done to it itself that reduced a lot of that, but there will be, the gap will be significantly smaller, but in turn, there will be other depreciation if you want to look at it from where on the asphalt,
Mhm.
fixing the ramp, fixing taxiways and things of that nature that'll be affected by the use on the fuel farm, things of that nature that you have to look into, take consideration with the increase in air traffic. So that's, so the question is, Eric, because we're alluded to, are other things, can they cover rent? I mean, not just rent, but other income cover fixing or building new hangars? Well, do you look at it as the hangars take care of hangars and then fuel cells take care of fuel farms, or take care of your ramp? I can't have, I mean, you can't fill in the gap with fuel cells or other services to take care of hangars. Hangars need to take care of hangars, if that makes sense. Because
It
I've
makes
got,
sense.
I mean, I can't rely on the state to do a resurf, to come in and rejuvenate. The next time I have to do a runway project, it was $6 million 4 years ago. Can you only imagine when it's due next, what it's going to be? I mean, you're probably talking 10 times that.
So then it comes down to how you record your different incomes from your hangars and your fuel farm. And then somebody's gonna have to break those numbers out, I would imagine, in order to determine what it's gonna cost 5 years from now to fix a hangar, and then factor that into the rate increase.
But
I've
not
got
just,
no
but
problem
not
with
just
that.
fix.
Yeah.
How am I going to expand? How are we going to get more hangars?
Then you have to build in a contingency fund there as well, for expansion.
I
What's
agree.
that gonna be worth?
I agree. That's why I want those tie downs at $550 a month.
You would have done well last month.
We're not talking about it anymore.
So we're not in a position today to really make a decision about that number. We need more information. Do you update it to?
No, it's there.
What about the depreciation issue or the other fund that you're saying you want and need, but it's not there?
I think, and in my opinion, because you asked my opinion earlier, my opinion is that we still can't quite close that gap. You're gonna get to, I mean, we're gonna have to take it, and we're gonna have to take big bites out of that elephant to be able to start establishing that. And it could be that we do, like you said, have an annual increase, but then again, take another $100 jump or $75, $50 jump, whatever, to try to help close that gap in the meantime. And then there'll still have to be some more. There'll still be some adjustments later that'll have to happen. You just won't be able to take it all at once, just because of the fact that from day one, there was not a standard market adjustment from day one. If it had been a set, when those hangar doors opened for the very first time and they set the leases up that way, then everybody knew that, at the end of year one, my release was going to go up $10. And $10, by that time, at the end of 20 years, they know that gap was there. Now, instead of all of a sudden you've got $200 up increase, that's when everybody has come apart.
But you know, to Eric's point, and your point as well, if you took the financials and you broke them into the components, hangars, fuel, everything, and build out the cost, the revenue and the cost, but build out the cost. Because on fuel, we kind of know the cost. It's primarily some tanks, a truck and
Labor.
Personnel.
labor.
Yeah, that's what my labor
But-
costs.
The hangars is the maintenance, which you've got recorded. The depreciation of them, so you can replace them in 30 years. Cost of building, and all of that. We don't have that.
Right.
And so if you really built out the cost of the hangars, then you can figure out, all right, well, what's a fair rent? And then in the view of, okay, versus our current rent, and all right, now, where do we want to be?
And then with that fair rent in mind, how do you implement it?
Agreed.
Yeah, and that may or may not be a problem. The FAA says clearly that if you find yourself in a position financially that you cannot quite become self-sustainable anytime soon, what we do ask of you is to come up with a long-range plan on how you intend on doing that. So your idea factors in, and Eric's ideas factors in, and the fact that MTSU is going to be here anytime within the next couple of years, that puts us pretty damn close to being self-sustainable. All right, and then we also have 2 other hangars that we are almost obligated to build. So I would agree with that. We need to do that. Absolutely.
So we're gonna vote today on the 430 with 3% escalation clause. Is that what everybody wants to do?
I don't think I want to vote on 430. No,
What number do you want?
I like 370, somewhere in through there.
Let's go around the table. I don't have a dog in, not enough information. And my inclinations jump straight to the 430. It's just straight math. You're dealing with people, obviously they did things that caused y'all to back up last time.
Right.
So you think 370 is more powerful?
370 should be. I mean, there are a couple of places that are similar to our operation here.
Murfreesboro has-
This 373,
Yeah.
somewhere through there.
But that's a different animal.
I understand that. That's why. I argue,
That's
yeah.
their old hangars that are, have water going through them and they're,
But if we're below
Manual doors.
Murfreesboro on that tiers you've got us, you were talking about, then we would be above Tullahoma and all the surrounding areas.
I can tell you, me personally, I want to be better than, I want to be better than I,
So
so I want to charge better than I.
I'd like-
to be better.
I would like to hear, so you're at 430 and 3.
I don't mind being the bad guy
Yeah.
and I don't care what they come up and say.
Okay.
So I would move that we adopt 430 with 3% escalation clause.
I'd like to hear, and you're at
I'm at
370
370. I don't mind being the bad guy.
and what escalation?
At 445, somewhere in through there.
4 to 4.5? What is your thought?
The 370 sounds good to me, and escalation 3.5 to 4.
3.5
I'm just guessing.
to 4?
I would have liked more information.
Yeah. Yeah.
But without, in the absence of facts, I would actually be a compromise between the two.
Yeah.
I would probably say, I want the $100. I want to go to the 415. I'm willing to do it in 2 tranches. But I want the $100 and go ahead and tell everybody now. It's 50 and 50 plus escalation on top of
50
it,
per, in the
Per
next 2
year.
years. Okay.
2 years.
And then an inflation
And then inflation.
of,
I'd probably put it at CPI, and that way it's just automatic, whatever it is, it is.
CPI?
3%.
3
this
to
year.
5, 3 cents.
Yeah.
it changes.
It changed.
It changes.
It
It
changes.
changes. And I'm saying above that, let's just call it 3% for contingencies such as the pandemic and supply chain issues. Would it make it 4.25, somewhere in through there? That some degree covers those emergencies, if you will.
So, and then I'm with you. I mean, I did the numbers. Those were that's my handwriting there. And yes, we did back off, but I think it's been several years now. And so I'm back at the 430 and 3 as well. Originally, I was with the CPI as well, but I can see how that creates confusion and I can see how somebody wants to know for certain each year to be able to calculate, and that'd be the only reason I
Okay.
vary.
I see us
on that,
guessing
so.
at numbers. Could we not, since we don't have to do something today to get the numbers that you're looking for on depreciation and the cost?
All the other
On just the
aspects.
hangers like you were talking about.
Would it be a good idea to formulate a subcommittee then and do that?
We can probably just ask and get it, can't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll get it from them.
Yeah, so we,
Now the thing about it is our numbers are audited. Of course, we haven't closed our books for this past year that just ended at the end of June. Those numbers will not be audited until the end of the year. So what you're going to be looking at is not from June of last year to
Wait.
June of this year, but the year prior. Those numbers were just finished.
I get that, last year's numbers. But doesn't the city know what their depreciation is, even if it's unaudited?
Well, I can find that out.
Yeah. I would,
I texted Kay while
I would suggest,
while this
I would
conversation was
suggest the
going
city
on.
should know what your depreciation.
And I'm sure that
Wouldn't
we know.
buildings be a
She-
straight line depreciation? So whatever was last year, it's this year
probably the
and
same,
unless the
about the same,
depreciation is
yeah.
over.
Probably about the same.
She says we do a depreciation schedule for all fixed assets annually with our audit. I can give you a copy of the airport portion when it is completed, which I took to make
That
this
last
year's,
year's is fine.
but I can probably get you last year's.
Folks, you're not, y'all don't run for the city council because you'll just die. You can't make everybody happy. It ain't gonna happen. They raised the property taxes last year. I made the motion to lower them. Then another councilman wanted to drop the bottom out of them. I mean, and we reached a happy medium. Basically what I proposed to start with, but you're not gonna make them all happy. And just like Gary said, there's people waiting in line wanting them hangers. And I mean, I hate for you, we're not gonna lose any, y'all are not gonna lose anybody. If they don't want it, get yourself out of the way. We got somebody sitting there waiting, but you're not, don't think that you're gonna make everybody happy sitting at this table, because it ain't gonna happen. I'm telling you, it ain't gonna happen.
Which is why I don't think we need to dive that deep into it. I mean, I don't think we're gonna find that we're gonna change our mind too much. I mean,
That's fine.
It would be entertaining for me to, like we just, for the first time in years, had a change in rent. I mean, not change in rent, but change to a person left because he took a job out of town, left, and somebody got to get moved into one of the hangars. You never seen a guy more happy, and he was like, but it would have been entertaining to put that one out saying, well, our waiting list is gone. We're going to put that up for bid like we would anything else in the city. That would have been entertaining just to see what the bid would have been on that T hangar. And I can tell you that, they would have probably started at 500
oh yeah,
just to get started.
Yeah.
And that's it then. And so I guess you could say a bid is fair market value.
Well, the last increase was 2 years ago.
Mhm.
I'd probably go with 430 and 3 and just.
If the 430 is right, I'd hate for to say that, yeah, you ran your mouth and voted on 430. Guess what? That was based on data that wasn't right. If you're confident that that's the number, then I say 430, but where it gets broke off in is if that number's not
Then
that was 2 years ago number.
right. Okay.
that number, that gap, similar in operating expenses, yes, but in the meantime, I'm also still trying to do other things to bring more income into the area. So income is being increased, but again, with that comes the wear and tear and the other depreciation of other assets around here, not just the hangars themselves. So yes, am I looking to add another hangar like we did Dr. George? I mean, and other hangars here and there with other leases since then? Yes, there've been other leases signed since then. There'll be other leases with MTSU. There'll be other leases with Azura. There'll be other things established with other businesses I'm talking with too. So they'll help close that gap. So it's hard to compare that same number, but as far as Have we still been able to afford to build a hangar since then? No, the city hasn't. The city needs to.
We got a list of 120 people. Have we made a recent inquiry? Are you still interested or is that an old list?
There's a collaboration of multiple.
Because you also got, a lot of these people are on hangar list at other airports too.
But like 10-year waiting period for some of them? I mean, I'd hate for that information to be stale and there really aren't 120 of them.
I personally have been on the list since 2015, and I think I asked today, what am I, number 9 or something? Yeah, so,
Sometimes the names have kind of moved around, I noticed.
yeah.
Are you still interested at the new
I am
rate?
still interested at the new rate, yes.
Okay. Do you want to vote on this or do y'all want to put it off?
I'm comfortable voting on it today.
It's
It's up to,
Other opinion from the director would be, I kind of like your idea of letting people know ahead and staging it and doing it over I mean, sure, I would love to pull the Band-Aid. I voted and I was very excited about the 430 2 years ago. That's where it should have been 2 years ago, but probably the way it went with all of it at once was too hard to achieve and it cost, but finding a way to get to that 430 over time to where there is a potential of.
The FAA does not
half
require
of it.
closing the gap by this weekend.
Yeah, half of it this year, half of it next year, so
Right.
to eventually get there. But I do think that something like that would. How you want to do it, that's up to you. That just seems to.
And the lease comes up what month? The lease. The lease is on the T hangars.
They're short-term leases, so they come up every,
It-
you really, if you want to say every 30 days. 60 days, and then they're,
If you're asking, like, if you all approve it at this point today, if you vote something, then we'll put it on the, agenda for the August 10th vote. And then if the council approves it, then he can make it effective anytime after,
they
you know,
basically.
September 1st.
They have, I think it's 60.
yes, I was gonna
60
mention,
days of
so,
lease. So after that, we'll notify the tenants and we have 60 days
So
to.
the tenants will have 60 days. Okay.
so that would, if you play that out, that would be mid-October before new rates, which means really November, because you,
Make
Yeah.
it effective 1st
So-
of November.
yes, that's pretty good notice.
So the first one would be 65, I mean, 365.
370, 375. So, oh, I don't know.
Oh, to do it.
So that's
Well, if you-
$50 instead of 365 for the first increase. Right?
Pardon?
It'd be 365 for the first increase. To break it up. If you do it in increments.
372.
372.50.
372.50. If you divide the difference between 430 and 315 is 115. So if you divide that by half, it'd be 57.50 this year, 57.50 next year. So 315 and 57.50 is 372.50.
So the only other thing is your standard increase. Do you want to wait till it's done and then start it, or do you have it start at the same time? Problem is, we're having to close that gap.
I'd say
Get it
start
to
at
where
the
it should
same
be.
time. Gap closing is critical, but
So then at the end, you got 72.50 plus 3%, 4%, whatever.
4%, if that's what the board decides, is okay.
Somebody want to make that motion? It got awful complicated there right at the end.
They're not gonna eat you folks, I promise you, they won't. The big boy up. It's hard sometimes.
You're good at the motion.
Let me see if I can remember.
Big boy.
Okay, so regarding the T hanger lease rate, I make a motion that we increase the lease rate by $57.50, effective as soon as possible, with an additional increase of $57.50 1 year from the effective date of the first increase. In addition to that, a 3% cost of living inflation factor to be built into the lease for year 2 and all succeeding years. That's sound right?
Yep.
I have a motion from member Larson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from member Fayard. All those in favor say aye. Any
Can I-
opposed?
I'm sorry, can I ask for a roll call since?
Sure. Welcome.
Sorry, I gotta go over here and find y'all's names. Okay, if you vote yes, you're voting in favor of Mr. Larson's motion. Member Wilson,
Yes.
member Fayhard,
Yes.
member Kazort,
Yes.
Chairwoman Wharton,
No.
and member Larson.
Yes.
Okay, it does pass with 4 yes and 1 no. So it will be on the agenda for the council to
Okay.
consider that. It'll be presented to them at the study session with discussion and then an August 10th vote.
August 10th.
Yes, ma'am. That is right, isn't it? That's Thursday.
First and, yeah,
Yeah, the first is the study session.
it'll pass.
Thank you. So the next item is environmental and noise assessment request for MTSU.
We received a letter from Dr. McPhee. MTSU is going to be required to get a environmental and noise assessment. I'm not sure who's requiring it. I don't know if it's
That
a
is-
building.
It is actually being required by federal FAA
FAA.
through the state of Tennessee.
And it can, because the city currently owns the land, still owns the land, it has to go through us, like we're the ones that are requesting it and paying for it. However, in Dr. McPhee's letter, he guaranteed that as soon as it is done, Garver will be doing it because they are the airport's engineering company. And as soon as they are done, they will present the city with an invoice, we'll pay it, and then we'll forward all that over to Dr. Van Patten, and they will reimburse us the full amount of the money, which it's going to cost a total of $130,800.
Supposed to get every bit of that back.
We
so
get every bit of
why
it
don't we do it?
back.
Yeah,
It comes,
exactly.
it just has to go through the city. This is also on the city council's agenda for consideration through them. But we just wanted a recommendation from the airport that we do it. And at first, we thought this was a very immediate need, but Dr. Van Patten has since sent me an email that says it's not, it's a little bit further down the road. But just so we don't get caught being the ones to hold it up, we wanted to go ahead and get it through our process.
The only thing that's, the reason why it's can be delayed a little bit, and it's not our delay. It's actually MTSU's delay because part of the assessment they need to actually see the footprint. They need to have some idea about what they're gonna do, and MTSU didn't know yet. I mean, they have these ideas, they need ideas on paper. So they've got to get something that at least is some kind of draft that they can put out there for the actual footprint so that it goes before as part of the study. But there are some items that Garver will be able to do in the meantime, because this process could take as long as 8 to 12 months to do, because there's a noise analysis in it. So some of that can be done prior to. There's just some of the other areas, because they're still trying to negotiate and discuss with FAA if there's going to have to be an archaeological dig. There's all kinds of other things that are going to have to be done on the area, on the site. They're trying to trim some of that stuff off and trim it down, but FAA is definitely wanting a noise analysis done, which is not sure why. I mean, there's been several noise analysis done on GA airports. There's been one in Tennessee that actually left airport property. And that was Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge Airport. And the only reason why I did that was because of the shape of the mountains around it, caused a reverberation off the mountains. Was the only reason why this noise symbols went off. The biggest part is going to be they're going to find there's more noise coming from the ambulances going to the hospital than there are from the two. But it has to be proven and it has to be shown, and to back up this information for FAA and for the public, because there will be some throughout this whole process of not just this, but the design and things like that. There'll be several public meetings So I'm sure FA's using this has used this in the past at other meetings to defend big changes at airports. And so that's why FA's requesting this and requiring this. This is something that it'll be interesting to see, like the data comes out from.
And if there are, depending on the noise issues that are determined with the study, who bears the brunt of the responsibility for mitigation and noise abatement procedures? Is that FAA?
That'll be us.
That'd be us, right?
That's part of the other thing that this agreement, one of the reasons why it has to come before the authority too, is that we have to initiate a work order with Garver. So that's part of the reason why it's before you as a vote, because we initiate the work order. Garver does the work, then the city itself is refunded. So, but again, this is another item that Ginger was supposed to address when she was here, whether or not with this is sufficient or there's any.
She's going, I'm sorry, Paul, I'm gonna interrupt, but at a meeting we had the other day, she is going to prepare a memorandum of understanding between us and MTSU that spells all the
Okay,
particulars out.
all right.
She feels the letter's good, but just to
There needs to be
kind of give
more.
it a little more meat, she's gonna do a memo of understanding to have all the parties sign off on it.
Okay.
Sorry, Paul, that was at
No,
a
that-
meeting that I was at yesterday. I didn't
Okay,
get
and I had brought that to her attention and left it for her to think on, but I didn't know the results of what she came up with. Yes, Eric, it's still gonna be on us.
It will be on
So
us,
if
and I'm
there's anything
wondering,
that comes about, it will be on us.
right, And-
Again, but we'll follow through with, I would say, any kind of mitigation that comes about specifically for MTSU, for noise, it won't be. But if there is something that does come up, then it'll be addressed and it could affect their design, how they flow, how the ramp is done.
what
I know
time?
that Alan's gonna, but I hope to comment on a couple of things on his status, but I know we've already David and I've talked about the layout. We've hit on some different things on their layout to get their airplanes sitting in a certain spot and that'll help with noise when they're running up, different things of that nature, but still,
No touching those after dark, different approach procedures, profiles.
they're not,
They're not going to,
they're not gonna hit any of the levels. They're not, no matter what, I mean, I have a whole association right over there that comes to see me on a regular basis, or phone calls. I mean, there's one lady that she says, it's me again. She says, they don't have to wake me up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and there's various things.
Have any of them called for you to look up on Burr Tower to see who just might have gone over their house?
I
know you told one lady about it.
and we tell them about it, and it's amazing how they can tell me that they're, 100 foot over the house. They know exactly how tall our airplane is over their house.
my roof's
They only missed it by about 500 feet, but they're pretty close. But the thing is, for our council members, that none of them are in the city limits. They're in the county.
Yeah.
So again, you get that nice rub where they say, you got the city running the county. I've heard that statement come out too.
Hey, do I have a motion to recommend this letter to the council?
Motion.
I have a motion from member Wilson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We're gonna let him go.
Okay.
Member Fayard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. So we have no new business. Any other business and announcements?
I was hoping that Alan would be able to give us, he is at the last city council, Juris lease was approved. And so maybe an update as to where they are.
Sure, we're actively working with MTSU's legal counsel and Dr. Van Patten and Bill Waits, who's the building guy for TSU. Alan Thomas, who's the vice president of finance or CFO. And they're pushing hard. Now that we have an approved lease, what we're working on is a sublease that would include the leasehold improvements and financial terms of that. We have numbers from our builder now within the last 24 hours so that we can input that into the sublease to MTSU. We're working on legal language. I think we're gonna have all that resolved in the next couple of days. And they're pushing hard to get before the state. And I don't have the exact name of it, but it's the state bonding authority that deals with higher education, who has the funds that were allocated from the state of Tennessee legislature. And it's a cycle, just like everything else is in government. If they can get it there next week, then we could conceivably start. If you look at everything that happens after that, we could conceivably start in October. If they miss next week, then we would start in November. Of course, that gets into rainy season and all that. You know, our builder thinks that it is a 4 to 5 month, depending on rain, 4 to 5 month timeline, because we're mainly doing earthwork, gravel and asphalt. There's no buildings. And so even if it doesn't start till November, we still think we could probably, the goal is to try to be in March. And kind of when spring break happens, you know, they could have everything set up to start transitioning some fleet down here. That's what you guys have done here too. I mean, I'm so that's so. Anyway, we're pushing hard. I think there's not, you know, there's a little legal language between us and MTSU, but I think that's not adversarial. It's just getting lawyers to understand each other. And we've got everything else. So hopefully by the next meeting, we can tell you that all of that stuff is sitting at the state, and the guys at MTSU who deal with the state think that they would prioritize it because the state is aware that this is a priority and they funded it and everybody would like to see it happen. So maybe they get special consideration. They're not just not another something that they're up there processing through. But, probably next meeting, I think hopefully we'll have a good update on that. Making progress. So took 18 months to get this far. If you got any questions, feel free. I think I've told you everything I know. So,
Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Thanks, yeah.
Any other announcements or pieces?
One in the corner there. He might be facing the wrong direction. He might just need his nose in the corner. But no, we still, again, I was hoping Ginger was here. We still do not have a contract or a lease with McAir. I have requested it several times and in several ways, to the point that his lease has expired. Originally, we were doing an amendment or an addendum to his lease, and now it has expired. So we'll see how she handles it from this point forward. But she's been made aware multiple times.
So I'm down to the wire. Okay, my existing lease for my business, the portion of that I've been in for years, expired in June. Okay, so now I have no lease at all. We negotiated lease rates earlier and also to take the North Hangar, which I understand that you may not know yet, that you're going to get some invoices for some other hangar rags and damages that you don't even know about yet. So it's costing more and more money for you not to give me that building. Okay, it's costing you more than you're going to make. So I need a lease, and who do I need to talk to? Where you tell me who to go to talk to, and that's where I'll go.
Paul,
I need to know that I'm going to be in business, and I don't want somebody to come to me and say, "Oh, you don't have a lease, so somebody else wants this."
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
is the board holding anything up here, Paul?
The board is not.
So what
Legal.
is legal?
Legal.
The board has not been presented with anything. The airport manager has not presented me with anything to
That's because he's not received,
deny or negotiate.
he hasn't received anything.
I mean, we've passed, it's been passed.
So we've approved it here. There's,
It's all been approved here
okay.
based on numbers that he and I had discussed. There's only so much I can do with.
January, February.
March, maybe, February, March. March.
When we had our meeting yesterday, Ginger, and Scott. She's aware of it and she was planning on being here for the meeting today. And she said, we talked about the fact that your other lease had expired. She said that, you know, she would take care of it
Okay.
and she was on top of it. And I don't know exactly what that means, but I will bring it back around and we'll have another discussion about it. And I'll make sure that Scott's aware of it.
Well, I mean, I can go almost anywhere to move with anybody, because I have airplanes and cars and trains and everything else. So it's not a problem that us having a board meeting. If she wants to talk, let me know. I can go down
Let's
there
just
and
make sure.
Why don't you go sit in her lobby?
Have you got her number?
Well, is it my responsibility to contact her?
Well, I mean,
If you want to get it done, then
I will, if that's what you want me to do. I'll contact the mayor, the governor, whoever it takes. I just need assurance that I'm gonna be able to stay in business without somebody living over, you don't have a lease, I want your building,
yeah, I'm glad.
I'll pay more, you know, kind of thing.
Well, I think we have an agreement. We have an agreement through this board and through the council. So I don't, you know, I don't believe we gonna have anybody come in and take your building away from you. But I will endeavor with all my power to make sure this is not on next month's agenda. I don't have a lot of power, but what power I got, I'll do something about it.
Okay.
Hopefully she's got more than I.
Okay, next is citizens' comments.
Yeah, I didn't mean, because it sounded like I've been on Tullahoma board for years, and I'm also a pilot. And a part of the problem is not enough people come from the public
Right.
and hear what's going on. And I think what y'all did is perfectly right. You got to do it incrementally and not shock people. And most general aviation pilots don't think of themselves as Ferrari owners. They think of themselves, you know, like driving a truck or something. And they want to, yes, yeah, and they want to keep their car. So, but as far as the CPI, we did that CPI every year in Tullahoma, and the pilots didn't like it. But what I told them was, look, the FAA requires it. You can use the FAA as the fall guy. You have to do it.
Mail them a copy of the grant assurances and be done with it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's all I was gonna say. I agree with you.
Thank you.
Just so the board knows too, with the new citizen comment rules that we've discussed here prior, we've set new citizen guidelines from the council that are good for every board. So I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of those. They're pretty much basic, same as what we've had before. But we did move citizen comments up. And so from now on, I didn't get it on your agenda this time, but from now on, citizen comments will come in right under the approval of the agenda. And they do that because comments will be limited to items on the agenda. So we wait till we approve it. That way, if we add something, which we really ain't supposed to do, but if we do, then they can comment on that. But from now on, that's where it'll come in at, okay?
The gentleman had a comment. Yep.
Yeah, well, you see, I think what I'm talking about was on the agenda. One was your,
Well, today it don't matter. Go ahead.
oh, okay. Your person, Paul, was your comment about the contaminated fuel and whatever. As a pot owner around here, you know, I'm a minimal of that. If y'all want to put contaminated fuel containers in certain areas, I can use those. It might be nice to have a ladder, because I've discovered it's hard to pour fuel back in a 182 with my stature.
Mhm.
And the other one was just a comment on CPI. I think that's the way to go, and just the back of the envelope, because I've got kind of a math head. If you use the assumption like, oh, those used to be $250 ago, $250, and that was 12 years plus 2 years ago, 14 years at 2% per year, that's a 32%, which is about 330. At 3%, that's about 51%, which would be about 378. At 3.5% for 14 years is 1.62. That's about 405. And you're talking about 20 years.
Yeah.
20 years at 3% puts you to about 4th mark. That's just
So we're right in the ball.
sounds like you're in the ballpark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's just hangers.
Yeah, Bill Haynes.
That's not. We still like that.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the
So
meeting?
moved.
I have a motion from member Fayard. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from member Larson. All those in favor say aye.
Uh,
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Man.